What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today I want to talk to you about X-Men Civil War 2. This is written by Cullen Bunn, with pencils by Andrea Brocardo, and inks by Jesus Aburtov. This is a 4-issue miniseries that ties in with two big summer events from Marvel that I did not read. Civil War 2, which was a story where this guy with precognitive abilities to see into the future, he senses that Miles Morales is going to kill Captain America. And then this splits the superhero community. You've got some people who are saying that they should go after Miles Morales right now for this thing that he has not yet done. And then you have some people who say, no, we shouldn't be fighting people and imprisoning them or killing them for things that they haven't done yet. And so that's the plot of Civil War 2. And then you've also got Inhumans versus X-Men, where the Terrigen Cloud, Terrigen is the mineral that gives superhuman abilities to the Inhumans, it is somehow released on Earth. And it is life for the Inhumans, but it is death for mutants. Somehow it's deadly to mutants, even though this contradicts the events of Silent War, which was a miniseries that came out around the time of House of M and Civil War, where Quicksilver was using Terrigen to give new mutant abilities to mutants who had lost their powers, and it wasn't deadly to them then, even though they no longer had their abilities. They were still mutants, and Terrigen wasn't deadly to mutants at that time, but apparently it's deadly to mutants now. So whatever, that's hugely inconsistent. But anyway, this kind of ties in with both of those. You have Magneto, who is doing whatever he can to save mutants at any cost, and he finds out that Storm and her group of X-Men are allied with the Inhumans, and they are basically using this precognitive guy to try and put out fires before they happen. And somehow Magneto thinks that the Inhumans are going to use this precognitive guy against mutant kind at some point. And both Magneto and Storm are idiots in this book, and it pains me to say that because I like both of these characters normally. This is another one of those hero versus hero stories that does not make sense because nobody makes sense in this story. Most of the time, whenever you have a hero versus hero story, both of the heroes have to act like idiots in order for the plot to actually happen. In this case, you have the Inhumans, who are basically supervillains. They are allowing this Terrigen Cloud to go around Earth, killing how many mutants we don't even know, and they're not doing anything to stop it. The closest thing that they do to taking action against the Terrigen Cloud is sending Storm and her group of X-Men to save Magneto and his group of X-Men from getting killed by the Terrigen Cloud. That's the only thing that they do in regards to this Terrigen Cloud. As far as I'm concerned, Medusa and the rest of the Inhumans are supervillains for allowing this thing to go on without doing anything to stop it. I don't know if they could do anything to stop it, but they haven't even made the attempt. And then you have Storm saying the Inhumans are not our enemies. Yes, they are. As far as I'm concerned, they are supervillains. And if you are going to stand by and do nothing while they stand by and do nothing, then Storm, that makes you an accomplice to murder. I don't know how many mutants have died at the hands of the Terrigen Cloud. At least one. Cyclops, spoilers, he died in Inhumans vs. X-Men, so there's at least one mutant who's died. And Storm, if you're going to stand by and say that Medusa isn't that bad and she's trying to help, which that's not what I'm seeing here, I'm not seeing the Inhumans try to help at all, then Storm, you are an accomplice to all of her crimes. And then you have Magneto, who makes this huge leap in conclusions where he says, okay, they have someone who can see into the future, that means that they're going to use him as a weapon. What? That doesn't make any sense at all. No, the Inhumans are not my favorite people right now. They are sending out this Terrigen Cloud to kill mutants, and that's bad. It would make sense if the plot of this story was Magneto just straight up going to war against the Inhumans because they've released this Terrigen Cloud on Earth, even if he's misinformed, even if it wasn't the royal family who sent the Terrigen Cloud, and I have no idea who sent it. Even if it wasn't the royal family, this story would make so much more sense if it was just Magneto going to war with them because he thinks that they sent this Terrigen Cloud and is killing so many mutants on planet Earth. That's not what's going on here. The only reason there's any conflict in this story at all is because Magneto and eventually Nightcrawler, they both think that they are going to take this kid who he can see into the future, and then the Inhumans will say, hey, this thing is about to happen that may not actually happen, and they will use this kid as a way to prop up their own statements about the future, and then they can do whatever they want. Again, it's a huge leap in conclusions. It doesn't make any sense at all that they are coming to this conclusion, and then they're fighting Storm's group of X-Men throughout this entire 4-issue miniseries. Basically, this book is a scenario where you have two people who each have two different sides of an argument, and then instead of actually using their brains, instead of actually acting in character, they're just going to fight each other for 4 issues. And that's basically what happens here. At the very end of the issue, Magneto finally meets the guy who can see into the future, and then Magneto asks him to show him the future, like pretty far into the future, and the guy says he can only see the short term. That doesn't make any sense, because the entire plot of Civil War II is this guy seeing far enough into the future that Miles Morales is going to kill Captain America. Now, I have been told that eventually they tied that in with the Secret Empire story, which was yet another story that I have not read. Apparently, in that story, once it is known to the heroic community that Captain America is working for Hydra and he has been compromised, then Miles Morales decides that he can go kill him. I don't know if that's exactly how it happened. That's what I've been told happened. I got that information secondhand. So apparently, this guy can see far enough into the future that he can see something like that, which was like 2 years after the events of Civil War II. But then here he says he can only see into the short term. And at one point he tells Storm and her X-Men that the Brood are about to attack Earth. And then the X-Men get there and that invasion has already started. And they're even saying like, he didn't see this vision in time. We're too late. And then one of them says, well, yeah, the Brood have already attacked, but we could have been a lot later. It could have been a lot worse without this guy warning us. What the heck? When does his visions actually happen? Is he able to see these things before they happen? Is he seeing them while they happen? It's incredibly inconsistent. And this is one of those things where if you just read this story by itself, it makes a lot more sense than if you read it with knowledge of stuff that's going on in other stories. It kind of reminds me of Avengers vs. X-Men in that way, where all of the characters in that story also act like idiots, and if you look at other stories happening around that time, they act even worse than they do in that story. This book, unfortunately, is not very good. Normally, I like Cullen Bunn's writing. I think that he is doing the best that he can with what he is given. I think that he was given a story point of, okay, Magneto is going to be fighting Storm, and their point of contention is this guy can see into the future, and he's with the Inhumans. And he does the best with that plot point that he can in the story. As far as I know, he did not have anything to do with Civil War II or Inhumans vs. X-Men, and so those, at least from what I know of them, pretty bad stories. In Civil War II, I don't know much about that, but Inhumans vs. X-Men, everything that I've heard about that was just completely garbage. So he is having to work with those stories and try to be consistent with those. Unfortunately, that makes this story falter a little bit. This story suffers because it is having to work with those other stories. I think if you just had a completely separate bone of contention between Storm and Magneto, you could have had a better story here. Maybe not a great story. It might have still suffered that thing that all hero versus hero stories suffer, but I think it would have been better than if it tried to tie itself with those other stories. I do like the artwork here. I think the art is very good. It's not what you're seeing here on the cover. The cover art is here. I don't know who does that, but it is not Brocardo or Bertov. The interior artwork here, I think, is a little better than the cover art. It kind of reminds me a little bit of a more realistic Humberto Ramos, and if you don't like Humberto Ramos, just take a look at what we've got here. I will show you this page here. That's kind of what you got going on. It's not really like Humberto Ramos. Like I said, it's a more realistic version of his artwork. But I like the art here, and most of the time I like Cullen Bunn's writing. In this case, though, I think he was working with a pretty bad idea for a story, and unfortunately, I don't think that he had a lot of wiggle room here to improve the story. I think this was very much editorially driven. They had these big summer events, and then they had this little mini-series to kind of tie into those, and he didn't have a whole lot of ways to improve this, unfortunately. So not a great story, just my personal opinion. What did you guys think of this event? Did you read this one? Did you read either of the other two that I did not read, or 3 if you count Secret Empire? Did you read any of those? I haven't heard a lot of good things about any of them. I haven't heard a whole lot of bad things about Civil War II. I just haven't heard any good things either. So anyway, what did you think of all that? Let me know in the comments below, and in the meantime, I will see you guys sometime in the future. Who knows when. So in the meantime, you guys keep it real. Have a good one.